Today's guest is Melissa Ashton. She's an inspiring speaker, accomplished author, and executive leadership coach with a passion for guiding individuals to an extraordinary life. She's been married for nearly 3 decades, has rich experience raising 6 incredible kids, and I love today's conversation because Missy talks about her inner voice, hearing it, how it guides her, and how she helps other people hear their inner voice. It's a conversation you're not going to want to miss. I've got a question for you. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge-free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I'm really excited today for you to hear from our guest. She's a personal friend. She is an executive leadership coach. She has so much personal knowledge and experience. Welcome to the podcast, Missy Ashton.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and so excited to visit. And I feel like we could just talk all day and enjoy hanging out and being together. So I feel like we just get to have a friend chat today.
I agree. And I'm so excited to learn more about you. I've heard a lot of your story, but I'm sure I'm going to hear more today. But let's kick it off there. Tell us a little bit about you. What do you do today, and how did you get to where you're at?
Today I'm the mother of six. I have most of my children are adults. I have two at home that are an 18-year-old and a 10-year-old at home. I have a granddaughter. So I have a lot of roles. I have my own coaching business, speaking business. I teach a lot on leadership and coach on leadership and transforming lives and helping people create the lives that they want to create and the businesses and organizations that they want to create. So today, that is how I spend most of my time.
I love that. And what led you to that? Did you always plan to be a coach? Did you plan to have 6 kids? How did this all unfold?
Well, I didn't plan. I did know that I wanted a large family, and I did plan on that. And I grew up in a very I'm the oldest of five, and I grew up in a pretty chaotic home. It was really There was really a lot of kind of paradoxes there because in some ways it was very I had a loving home on some days, I should say, and there was a lot of ways that we had a traditional home, but then also there started to be a lot of chaos and unpredictability, and my mom started dealing with some addictions, and my dad traveled a lot, and there started to be a lot of fighting. And the older my younger brothers got, they started becoming involved in their own addictions and their own problems. And so the older I got, really the more chaotic my home life was. And I decided probably at a very early age as a teenager that I wanted my life to be different. And I really made a decision that I was going to have a different life. So a lot of my decisions that I made and choices that I made from early on were to that end, that I'm not going to live my life like this. I want it to look different and be different. So I had decided that. And to answer your question about being a coach or a speaker in the business that I have, no. The way that really came to be, one is I really started feeling called to share my story. I had been through a lot, personally and as a family, and I really started feeling in my heart that I needed to share my story and the things that I had been through. And I had really personally started to struggle. I had been through a lot and I was an adult. At that time, we had five of our children. We lived in a beautiful home. By anyone's measure, we were living like the white picket fence life. I had everything that I wanted. I had, beautiful, healthy children. By really most people's standards, um, I really had a happy life. But I was not happy. And I actually felt guilty about that because I would think I have everything that I've wanted and I've created what I wanted to create. And I had, this family and my children and our home, and we had a successful business at the time. All these things that, are really what most people measure success by. And inside, I was really, really struggling. I would think to myself, well, I realized that I was not really feeling at all. I was actually really numb inside. And
Mhm.
I remember having this thought, I'm, I'm one of the only ones in my family that's sober and I'm completely numb.
Wow. Well, just not to feel anything, but to recognize that too. And I know part of your story and that you really have been through a lot. And can you maybe take us back through some of that? I know you got the call that no parent wants to get, that your son was in a horrific car accident. Is that when you feel like this chaos and a lot of it really started?
Well, I think so. When you get a phone call like that, our son, he was 11 and we had been at baseball practice. It was just, one of those ordinary days. I had two other small boys at the time. Um, we had left him. I left baseball practice with him, took our other two children home, meeting my husband at home, and he left with my niece or my cousin and a couple of friends, and they were going to go to the roller rink for like an hour, hour and a half after baseball practice. And they ended up getting in a really terrible car accident. Travis, our son, was injured the most, and he suffered a very severe traumatic brain injury, which led him to um, his prognosis was that if he lived, he would be in a vegetable state. It wasn't likely that he was going to live, but if he did, a complete vegetative state that he would be in. And he was in a coma for quite a while. And, he eventually was able to come off of life support and did wake up out of a coma, but he really couldn't do anything. He couldn't move any part of his body, he couldn't communicate with us. He couldn't blink his eyes at will or squeeze our fingers or anything. He really was at that point in a vegetative state. And, that, is a nightmare phone call that no parent ever wants to receive. But, you know, from that moment, at the time, we lived in Utah and he was life flighted to primary children's hospital. And like from that very first day, like I moved into the hospital. My other kids, we had to have care for them. And my husband would kind of manage going to work and their childcare. And, um, maybe he would bring them to see me at times, but that was my new home in an instant, was living in a hospital. From there to, rehab facility. Like this was months and months and months and years of rehab. And so I describe it a little bit like, um, if you are thrown into the deep ends of the ocean and you are just fine, like you have to just dog paddle to keep your chin above water. That's what it was like. There is no self care. It's really a survival. And, even if I could go back to that, you really can't move through things like that. It's not like I could just go, I'm going to go do yoga. I'm going to go, I'm going to go take some time, I'm going to eat well. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to, you know, the things that I was able to do during that time, which, was my lifeline and saved me, was that I was able to pray. It became a sanctuary for me, and I would find places to be alone in the hospital and pray. But beyond that, it's not um, it's not really feasible to just be in a self care mode because you are in a crisis mode and you're in a survival mode, and life does become so out of control, um, and 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 it's painful and hurtful to experience your child going through something of this nature. So um I think that that was when the beginning of me really losing myself.
Yeah. I could see that because I'm sure any mom would do that of just going into that survival mode. And I love your analogy of dog paddling in the ocean because I think it would be very much like that. I haven't been through anything like that, but it seems like that would be the case. And I can imagine, of course, you didn't have time to do any of those things. Like you have two other kids, a husband, and you're living at the hospital. How did that how did this story turn out with Travis? And then how did you start to recognize some of this numbness? Can you take us through the next part of your story?
Well, I think once Travis did, he was alive, he did live. He did wake up out of a coma. He was breathing on his own. He could open his eyes. That was about it in the beginning. It was very slow going as far as rehabilitation, but there was these little milestones of things that would happen. Like one day, there was maybe like 5 or 6 therapists surrounding his bed, and they were trying to get a response out of him, and like it was really heated. And they were like, "Travis, like, squeeze my hand," and everybody was just like on pins and needles. Like, is he gonna respond? Is he gonna do something? And, it was very, and, your heart is just, in your stomach, your stomach's in your heart. And you're just wanting so badly for him to react and be able to do something. And he was not doing anything. And in that moment, my husband was in the room, and it's not normally a time that you would say something funny. And my husband said something that actually was really a little bit inappropriate, but funny. And Travis laughed.
Mm,
He laughed out loud.
wow.
And so I knew that he was there understanding what was going on in the room, although his body couldn't respond. He spontaneously laughed. That was the first moment that I knew that I had felt in my heart this inner voice telling me that he was there and that he could understand what we were saying. And that he was aware of what was going on. I felt that very deeply in my heart, but I hadn't seen any evidence of it. That was the beginning of Travis, like this long road of therapy and rehab, and it was slow going. I mean, it took months and months and months, close to a year, for him to learn to stand up and walk and hold his head up, and he had a feeding tube, and it was he had diapers for a long. I mean, he literally had to relearn everything, which didn't happen overnight. It was years of therapy. It was even once. I think we were in the hospital for um uh, close to like 7, 8 months in the beginning before we actually came home. And then once we came home, it was going back to therapy almost every day. So that's what our life was surrounded with. That's been quite a few years ago. Travis is in his 30s now. He lives at home. Travis is completely cognitive. He understands everything. He is not able to speak. He hasn't been able to speak. He doesn't have a lot of use of his right arm, right side of his body. But he plays golf left-handed with one hand. He's really good at it. He goes to concerts and he works with my brother. He's a car detailing business that Travis works almost every day with him. Um, so he lives a pretty full life. He stays busy. He's really funny still. Um, you know, he does a lot to help us around the house and with our younger ones. So he lives a pretty full life, and he has all of his memories, is all of his short and long term memories, which is unusual for a brain injury. So yeah, there's some videos of him playing golf and like on my social media on Instagram and different places. If anybody wants to go take a look at him today, he's pretty miraculous.
Yeah. I've seen some of those and it is like amazing to see of just yes, him doing that and it seems like he has so much joy doing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not him, and so I think that for me to say that he doesn't struggle,
Mhm.
not being able to speak for that many years, we've had experience, like we've done some experiments within our family to like, um, can we go 8 hours without talking, or even a couple of hours? Very difficult.
Yeah.
And he's been, doing that for a lot of years of not being able to speak. He can sign, he can communicate. I mean, he has ways to communicate, but it's difficult. And so I'm not going to say that he doesn't have his challenges, because he does. I know that days are hard for him, but he really inspires me because he finds a way to find joy, and he has he finds humor. And he one thing that he does that's such a has taught me a lot is he always finds ways to help other people. He serves others a lot, and I think that that has blessed him. But it's inspiring because I think that is really true. Sometimes, in our hardest times, if we can get outside of ourselves and find ways to serve and help others, it helps us the most.
Yeah. I think that's so true. It can be so hard to do, but so, so true.
Right.
If you take us back to then, I know we're kind of like jumping a little bit in your story, but you go through this years of therapy, you have a couple more kids, correct? And then
Mhm, mhm.
at some point you really are looking in the mirror and you're feeling just numb. What's
Yes.
what do you do with that or how do you move forward?
Well, I really felt lost, and I felt like that I wasn't me anymore. I like all the things I love to do. I've always been a really creative person. I've always loved to grow things and garden and plant flowers, and I was funny and silly and fun, and I loved to dance, and all the things that were me. I didn't I just didn't see in the mirror anymore. I didn't feel that. I truly felt like I had lost me, and I didn't know who I was looking at in the mirror anymore.
Mm.
And um, I, you know, there was all these things that I was really unhappy with in my life, and I realized that I was the common denominator in it all, in everything that I felt like was wrong in my life or wasn't happy with. I recognized that I was the common denominator of that in all of that. And so I really started to in my life, always, 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 when I'm, don't know what to do and I don't know where to turn and I'm lost or overwhelmed, is always prayer. And so I really was just on my knees, like, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know, who do I, where do I start? And so I think when we ask, for help, and we sincerely are seeking to improve or to get better. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, that saying. Um, I started to read books, and I started to, listen to podcasts. Um, I started listening to a podcast from a coach, and I called that coach and hired that coach and for myself personally. And I started to learn what I'd never even heard of, doing inner work. And I started to do this inner work within myself. And I started to really actually see things that I didn't know had gone unhealed since my childhood, that I didn't even know, that I had a lot of subconscious things. It was really interesting. There was this time for me, because I had at this point spent all these years helping Travis to retrain his brain.
Mhm.
And then I started learning about how, more about and how our subconscious works and all these things. And I had this aha moment that if he could retrain his brain and, like I could do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, there was really some power in that. And so I started to, once I realized I could change myself and it could come from within me. And then I was like, "Oh, every book I could read, every workshop I could go to, every event, everything that I could do, I just started, really working hard on myself from the inside." And I started to change. I started I had to first start on just feeling my feelings again.
Mhm.
I had become numb and I didn't feel anything. I intellectually could say, well, I love my family and I love my husband and I love these, different people in my life or whatever. I'm grateful for what I have, but I didn't actually feel it.
Yeah. I think
It
that's
was
so easy and probably I know that I've been there too and probably just common in today's it's so easy to numb. And granted, you had like this horrific thing that of course like that's easy to numb. But I think every day we have social media, shopping, alcohol, food, whatever it is, just to numb out all of those feelings. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Either they've been there or they're there now of just feeling that numbness.
Well, I think it's an epidemic in society is that is and we don't realize these things are not, they're not necessarily bad. Like you named shopping or even working out or just watching Netflix. I mean, our society is filled with busyness and things that, actually really do keep us from feeling our feelings if we allow them to. And we can be so busy doing all these things and even doing things when we're not busy, like um, you know, I mean, our phones are at our fingertips, you
Mhm.
know? And I mean, even in a grocery store line, I mean, and I'm so guilty of, even standing still in a grocery store line of having my head in a phone. And, there's never a time, um, you know, that we really are still and like connect with ourselves. I mean, in our society, that's not the way our society is set up. We have to really, and I had to learn to reconnect with myself. I had to learn, I mentioned that had to relearn to feel my feelings again. Um, but I had lost myself so much, I didn't even know what I wanted. I thought, I don't even know. I would talk to my coach and she would say, well, what do you want to do? Well, do you want? And I had been so used to taking care of kids and taking care of a family and doing all these things. I had grown up taking care of my younger brothers. I just, I never really recognized that I thought this way, but I really was like existed just to serve other people and never even asked myself, well, what do I want? How do I feel about something? What are my goals? The coach that I heard, she would ask me these questions and I wouldn't have an answer. I would say I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I had to start doing a lot of self and inner work to like figure out, well, what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? What does make me happy? You know, what what do I want to create in my life? And how do I want, that to um um manifest? Like there was this moment, like I told you, that I realized I was the common denominator, that I was the one really kind of creating my own reality, which is like that's a hard day when you have to own that you're creating your own reality. But once you own that, then the other side of it is, oh, well, I can create my own reality. So it's the bad news and then it's the really good news.
Yeah. And you've done an amazing job of creating, like, I know it's not perfect, but a really amazing reality for yourself. Our tickets are booked, and I am so excited. It's official. We're going to Italy April 14th through the 20th. There's still time for you to join us. We're hitting Tuscany, doing all the amazing things like wine tasting, bike riding, cooking, and then we're going to spend 2 days touring Rome. There's still time. You can come with us. See the link in the show notes. I think a lot of people are like, okay, you said you reconnected with your feelings, but I know
Uh-huh.
how hard that is and how like overwhelming or just like give us like one or two little steps that somebody, if they're feeling numb, they haven't felt anything, how do you even start to feel your feelings?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do, but this really, really basic, and there's actually some. This sounds super simple, but there's actually some rewiring. Like your brain will start looking for things, and there's. I won't go into much the neuroscience of it, but once we think about something, our brain has a system to look for that thing. So, like if we see a car that we like, and for the first time, and we make a mental note, I might want to buy that car, or just think about. We start seeing that car like all the time. Our brain, our brain will like look for it and find it. Um, and so we're like, oh, everybody has this car. I didn't know it existed, and here it is everywhere. I never even saw it before. I never noticed. Now I see it every day, all day long. Um, so very, very starting, like I feel numb, I don't feel anything, I don't even know where to begin, is to move your body, to get just to like move your body. And then the next thing is look for beauty. Look for beauty around you. If we go out just outside, wherever we are, there's beauty to be found outside. And so um, I started to do this. I started to just um, I would go on walks and I was challenged. I was given this, I was told to do this by a coach. And I began to look for beauty around me and I started to see it. And then I started to notice beauty in the people around me. And, um, and I would start to see it. And then without even me really trying, like my life really I started recognizing how much beauty is really around me. And then I started seeing God's hand in things, really seeing his hand and how much goodness is really around me. And I started to make this flip of like from like negative feelings all the time and seeing what was everything wrong to like really recognizing that there is a lot of good. I started seeing God's hand in things again. Um, so then there was this next level. Okay, so um I was given the challenge to find beauty outside in nature.
Mhm.
And then the next level was to share it with someone. So, for instance, um, like watching a sunset. We can watch a sunset and like it really is amazing. If you take the time to watch a sunrise or a sunset, it does something to you. Well, you start to feel, things. And then if you invite someone you love and you watch the sunset together and maybe even hold hands or like put your arm around your child or your teenager and share that experience together, it creates feeling inside of us.
Mhm.
And it's really, really simple. It's a good way to start. It's a good way to start because it's there.
Yeah.
It's there, and those are also some really things like um, when I'm trying to um, kind of listen to my own inner voice and what it's telling me. Those are some of those very similar things that I would do. in that. But it's a very connecting to ourselves, and then we can start to share those things with other people. They're very. That sounds really simple, but if it's a daily practice, it has a lot of power in our lives, and that's just a great way to get started. There's a whole levels of where you can go from there. From even therapy. Sometimes you need a therapist who can help you feel feelings. There's many of us that have spent a lifetime, um, you know, s- stuffing feelings down and not even knowing where to begin. Never felt many feelings in our life.
Mhm. Yes, I think you're so right. And I love it's simple, but yet I'm just thinking of myself of taking the time to do it and how often I don't. Of just one, I'm busy, two, of things going on, but really taking the time to slow down, to see the beauty in things and people and share those experiences. Like I love that for first steps because it doesn't take a lot of money or time, but it does take effort.
It does. It takes time, but it is really a beginning of connecting with ourselves, connecting with our creator, and then, connecting with people that we love and care about.
Yeah. You talk a lot about your inner voice and how it's guided you over the years. And to be honest, I don't know, and I've never asked you this question, but I know that you fast forward several years in your life and you get a chance to adopt. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you used your inner voice there too?
Well, I will tell you that we were not looking. We were not looking for to add another child to our family. We were not. It's not something that we were seeking out, and we came across a situation where there was a little girl that was being the state was removing her from her biological parents and needed a foster family to place her with. We were not foster parents, and not something that we were looking to do. But she had some physical disabilities. She's blind, and she had quite a few medical issues that she needs, like daily medication and daily shots, and there would be a lot of therapy involved. And the state couldn't find anywhere to place her. And they were given my name, and somebody suggested that maybe I could help or help find, because I was familiar with, because of Travis, I had been through so much with, I knew a lot about medical, and I knew a lot about, therapy and, different things of that nature. And they called me and asked if I could come and talk to them. And I actually said no. I said no in the beginning, and I didn't. And they called me back, and they said, "Will you just come down? Maybe we think that you might be able to help us, find a place." At the time, she was right before she turned two. Um, and so I agreed to come down and talk to them. And um, it was in the afternoon, like they were getting ready to close, and they had this little baby girl with nowhere to go and no place. And so we really had to make a decision on the spot, if we were going to, like I needed to like decide that day in that moment to bring her home or not. And so I called my husband. We said a prayer together on the phone. Um, and he said, I'll support you in what you decide. This is primarily going to fall on you. You know, he, I can help. He, is working during the day, and, primarily was going to follow me. So I had a feeling that I should take her home, and help them find another placement. And they were telling me, like, within a few days we can find another, we'll find a good placement for her. And so I agreed to that. Well, the other placement didn't come. It kept not coming, and um I was really resistant actually in the beginning to this. I kept all the reasons, and my husband as well, all the reasons why somebody else would make more sense for this. We were older. We already had 5 kids. We had a son with a disability. We were in the middle of building a new home. We had all these reasons why that somebody else would be a better fit. Well, my other children immediately just took her in and played with her and loved her. And, I kept telling myself, I can't do this. We can't do this. And it started to occur to me as the days went on, we are doing this. We are doing this. And then this inner voice began to really speak to me that this is what we needed to do. And I actually had the thought to myself, okay, well, that's fine. If this is what you want me to do, Lord, I'll do this, but my husband's not going to go for this. So you're going to have to talk to him on your own, and good luck. Well, I didn't know it. But later he shared with me later, he started having his own inner voice telling him, you need to protect this child. You need to take care of her. And he started having his own inner voice talk to him. And I didn't know that was going on with him. And he didn't know what was going on with me. But eventually we realized it wasn't working out for her to go back to her family. It ended up being a very contested legal battle between the state and her biological family that we were actually not a part of. We were not parties in this legal battle, but we were actually in the middle of it. And that took almost 2 years. During that time, I would go to, they call it CPS court, was Child Protective Services Court. And we would have a hearing and we'd go and look at the docket, and you didn't really have a necessary, your name would be on the docket, but you didn't know when you'll be called. So for 18 months, I would go at least once a month, but sometimes a few times a month or more to different hearings through this whole court process. And I would sit and listen to hours and hours of hearings in CPS court for other children that are in the system. And the first thing that really stood out to me was nobody's showing up for this little girl. No one is really actually showing up for her. And I decided I'm going to show up. If I can show up, if I'm alive and I'm able-bodied, and I'm going to keep showing up for her because no one else is. And so I made that decision, in this court process, sitting in the courtroom. I decided whatever I can do, I'm going to be the person in this world that I'll show up. And so I made that decision, and my husband and I actually made that decision together, and we did continue to show up, and we did continue. And we ended up going through quite a few years of litigation in court, where later we were parties, and we did have to continue to fight more court battles. Something else happened to me. I'll just say this. You didn't really ask me this, but I'll add this, is that not only did I, during those times when I sat through all these hearings, did it change me to make a decision to show up for our little daughter. I saw how many kids are in the system that nobody shows up for. And the system is really broken. And they do the best they can showing up for them, but it's really broken. And so, speaking of inner voices in there, that changed me. Mm-hmm. And I started praying and saying, what can I do? I can't adopt all these kids. And obviously we're all set. I mean, I can't, it's not something that I can bring all these, all these kids home, and I can't take them all in, but I mean, could I do something? And I've really been able to become an advocate and be involved in a lot of things in that arena. that I have been able to do some things to help, and I've been able to join with other people and also bring some awareness to. There are things that we can do to help kids that are in the system. There's some things that everyone can do. So that is something that also through that experience um, really changed me, and that inner voice called me to do something that I never would have dreamed of being involved in had I not been through that.
Wow. That's big. And again, I knew part of it, but I didn't know all of your story. And I can just imagine resisting because you have had 5 kids. You did have one with a disability. Like, why are you being called to do this? But now, you've shown me pictures and I see her as part of your family and just how precious she is. But I'm sure that has been, a challenge. And I think it's a testament to you, especially, but you and your husband of just, you're willing to not be selfish in what you do on a daily basis and how you live your life.
Well, thank you. We often have people say to us that she's so blessed to have us. Her life would be different. If, I don't know what she would have done without you and your family, and in which there's some truth to that, but um, it's so beautiful because the way God works is we're so lucky to have her. She's been a ray of sunshine in our life, and not that it's been easy, and because it's a lot of it hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of challenges, but um, we have been able to take to help her, and she's just thriving. She went from where she was when she first came. Um, we could do a whole other podcast on me talking about how she is resilient and blossoming blossoming and um early on, when she first came to us, she was so behind and neglected, and um you know the school, we had her tested at 3 years old, and they tested her with an extremely low IQ. And she'd been so her body, her muscle tone was weak, and there's just so many things, she had so much to overcome. And um you know she's 10 now, going on she's almost 11, and she just recently this year, she's in 5th grade. This last week she competed in a um braille technology Olympics, and she won 4 medals. She recently was tested for a gifted and talented program and was accepted into being a gifted child. And where she's been to where she's come have been a lot of miracles. And um, I don't know who's changed who more. She's changed us a lot.
Yeah. I love that. I love that for both of you. Um, Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story with us. I know that somebody in the audience definitely needed to hear parts of all of that. And I think we've gone a lot of different places. But is there anything as we start to wrap up that's on your heart that you really want to share?
I think that I really want to share to anyone who's listening. And we did talk about a lot of things. And so um, I would just like to say that we all have our own inner voice. And and if we get still and we listen to it, and really listen to that voice that inside of us, I believe, my belief is that that's the voice of God who speaks to us. But if we really listen to that inner voice, he will speak to us. He will show us what we need to do to heal ourselves or to grow, or maybe to leave a situation, or maybe to take on a situation. Um, and that voice has never led me astray. I've had to work sometimes to hear it, but when I do, it's never led me astray. And not only has it not led me astray, but as we go through life and we experience all these things and we work through them, it's through my biggest trials that voices showed me what my calling and purpose in life is. And it's been it didn't feel like it at the time, in the valleys of the hardest things that I've been through, that God was taking me and leading me and growing me to um, my purpose in life. But that actually what has happened. And I believe that that's true for every single human. If they want to know what their calling and purpose is in life, um, that voice will tell you, and we all have one.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It's challenging for me right now. Maybe I'm the person that needed to hear you speak on here, because clarity has been my word for the year, and really to get quiet and listen to that inner voice is sometimes hard for me, but I know that I'm being called to do it right now, of just slowing every single thing down and really listening to what is that purpose? What is that calling? But I love I love everything that you share. You're such an amazing lady. You're very, very resilient in all you do, and you do it with just such amazing grace, for you, for other people, for everyone really around you. I think it just shows like all of the work that you've done on you to go from that girl that just sees numb in the mirror, not quite sure who she is, to who you are today and the gifts and talents that you really share with the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you and spend time together. But it's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Be the Person podcast. It's been my pleasure to bring you Missy as a guest, and I hope you'll tune in next week. And as always, if someone you know needs to hear this, please share and then give a 5-star review. Thank you so much.